The air in Port Royal was thick with the promise of rain, a heavy, humid blanket that clung to the skin. Lord Governor Alistair Finch paced his office, his face a mask of furious concern. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows of his grand stone manor as the first drops of the storm began to fall, pattering against the glass. He had received a dozen warnings, but his stubborn pride had kept him here, in this sweltering outpost of the British Empire, believing his authority was a fortress impenetrable by any storm. But it wasn't the weather that held his attention. It was his daughter, Lady Eleanor Finch, whose reckless nature had sent his guards on a fruitless search through the labyrinthine streets of the port. Eleanor, restless and defiant of her father's gilded cage, had slipped out under the cover of the brewing tempest. The port, usually a bustling hub of commerce and chaos, was emptying as merchants and sailors sought refuge. She felt a thrill of freedom as she navigated the darkening alleys, the scent of salt and rum mingling with the petrichor. Her destination was the notorious tavern, the Mermaid's Lament, a place forbidden to her, yet one she had heard whispered about in hushed tones by the servants. She needed to escape, if only for a few hours, from the suffocating world of balls and arranged marriages her father so meticulously planned. As she pushed open the heavy wooden door of the tavern, the noise and warmth of the place enveloped her. A mix of sailors, privateers, and a few rough-looking pirates filled the room, their laughter and shanties creating a boisterous symphony. She found a quiet corner, pulling her hood further over her head, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She was an observer in a world she was not meant to inhabit, a world far more real than her own. Across the room, Captain Rhys Sterling sat, his gaze as sharp as a cutlass. He was a man of the sea, his face weathered by sun and salt, his dark eyes missing nothing. His reputation as a pirate was both feared and respected. He was known for his calculated tactics and a code of honor that set him apart from the common rabble. He watched the young woman, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Her refined clothes and hesitant demeanor screamed noble in a place where such a thing was a death sentence. He saw her, truly saw her, not as the governor's daughter, but as a trapped soul seeking a moment of rebellion. Suddenly, a group of drunken sailors noticed her. Their jeering laughter cut through the din, and they began to close in, their intentions clear. Eleanor's breath hitched. She had been foolish, dangerously so. Just as one of them reached for her, a shadow fell over the group. Rhys stood before them, a quiet authority radiating from him. "The lass is with me," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Find your entertainment elsewhere." The sailors, recognizing the cold threat in his eyes, grumbled but backed away. Rhys didn't look at Eleanor. He simply took her arm, his touch firm but not rough, and guided her out into the torrential rain. "You have no business in a place like that, governor's daughter," he said, the truth of her identity a shock to her. "Someone will get you killed." Eleanor pulled her arm away, her resolve returning. "I can protect myself," she lied, her voice shaky. Rhys gave a short, humorless laugh. "Perhaps, but not from the storm that is brewing, both in the port and within your own walls. Go home, Eleanor, before your father's men find you and drag you back to your cage." She stood there, soaked and humbled, watching him disappear into the downpour. For the first time, she felt a connection to someone who saw her not as a pawn, but as a person. The rain fell harder, washing away the dirt of the streets and perhaps some of the naivety from her soul. She hurried back, knowing that her escape had come with a new kind of entanglement, one she hadn't anticipated, a pirate's warning and a glimpse of a world she now desperately wanted to understand. The morning after the storm, a tense quiet settled over Port Royal. The sun, sharp and unforgiving, beat down on the newly washed streets, evaporating the puddles. Eleanor was confined to her room, her father's fury a tangible presence even through the thick stone walls. He had found out about her venture, and the consequence was severe. She was to be married off immediately to a wealthy English dignitary, Sir Robert Thorne, a man known for his cruelty and cold ambition. Her desperation mounted with each passing hour. She felt like a commodity, a piece of a political game. In a moment of quiet rebellion, she scribbled a note, a desperate plea for help to the only man who had shown her a sliver of kindness and understanding. She had no idea where he was, only that he was a pirate. The note was simple and dangerously truthful. I am to be married against my will. My life is not my own. Please, help me. She entrusted the note to a young boy she had befriended, a street urchin named Finn, and paid him with her most cherished locket. Finn, knowing the risks, agreed to seek out the pirate captain known as Rhys Sterling. Meanwhile, Rhys was at the docks, supervising the repair of his ship, the Sea Serpent. The storm had been fierce, and his crew, a loyal and hardened bunch, worked tirelessly. He was a man of action, not sentiment, and the memory of the governor's daughter was an unwelcome distraction. He pushed it aside, focusing on the rigging and the splintered mast. Finn found him just as the sun reached its zenith. The boy, breathless and wide-eyed, handed Rhys the folded paper. Rhys's gaze hardened as he read the plea. He recognized the elegant script and felt a stir of something he hadn't in years, a sense of purpose beyond his own survival. He was a pirate, a thief, a man outside of the law, but he had his own code. And her plea, a raw testament to her helplessness, felt like a debt he was now honor-bound to repay. He knew the danger. Rescuing the governor's daughter was a suicide mission. It would pit him against the might of the British Navy and the cunning of Lord Governor Finch. His first mate, a grizzled veteran named Silas, noticed the change in his captain's demeanor. "What's on your mind, Captain?" Silas asked, his voice low. "A woman, Silas. A foolish one at that," Rhys said, looking out at the choppy water. "She's in trouble, and I find myself compelled to help her." Silas raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. Loyalty to Rhys was absolute. "What's the plan?" Rhys spent the next few hours formulating a plan, a high-stakes gamble that relied on speed, deception, and the element of surprise. He gathered his most trusted crew members, men he had plundered and survived with. He explained the mission, a daring raid on the governor's heavily guarded residence to extract his daughter on the night of her engagement ball. The stakes were impossibly high, but the crew, sensing the gravity in their captain's voice, agreed. They knew a fight was coming, and they would follow him to the depths of the sea if he commanded it. The plan was set in motion. They would create a diversion on the docks, drawing the guards away from the manor. Then, Rhys and a small team would scale the walls, enter through a less guarded entrance, and find Eleanor amidst the lavish chaos of the ball. The night air was alive with tension. Rhys felt a nervous energy he hadn't experienced since his first battle. He was a pirate, but tonight he was a rescuer, a man fulfilling a promise to a woman he barely knew, a promise that could cost him everything. The night of the engagement ball was a spectacle of opulence. The Finch manor glowed with 1,000 candles, and the sound of music and laughter filled the humid air. Eleanor, dressed in a heavy silk gown that felt like a shroud, stood on the balcony, watching the storm clouds roll in once more. Her heart was a lead weight in her chest. Sir Thorne was a monster in a fine suit, and she felt utterly hopeless. She had no way of knowing if her desperate note had even reached its intended recipient. Just as the first raindrops began to fall, a commotion erupted from the docks. A fire had broken out on a merchant vessel, and the alarm bells rang out, their frantic peals cutting through the festive music. Guards began to rush towards the docks, leaving the manor's perimeter understaffed. This was it. Rhys and his team moved with the precision of seasoned predators. They scaled the stone walls, their movements silent and swift. Inside, the grand ballroom was a blur of dancing figures. Rhys, wearing a stolen guard's coat, moved through the crowd, his eyes scanning for Eleanor. He spotted her on the balcony, a vision of despair amidst the celebration. He approached her, his voice a low whisper that only she could hear over the music. "Eleanor, it's time to go." She turned, her eyes widening in a mixture of disbelief and relief. "Rhys, I didn't think you would come." "A promise is a promise," he said simply, "but we must move, now." They slipped away from the balcony, navigating the back corridors of the manor. The fire alarm continued to blare, a symphony of chaos that bought them precious time. As they neared the servants' entrance, a patrol of guards, led by Sir Thorn himself, blocked their path. Thorn's face contorted in a sneer of triumph. "Eleanor, my darling, and here you are with a common criminal. This explains everything." A fierce fight ensued. Rhys, a master with his cutlass, fought with a desperate grace, his every move calculated to protect Eleanor. He parried Thorn's clumsy but powerful lunges, the clang of steel echoing through the narrow hallway. Thorn, enraged and outmatched, fought dirty. As Rhys dodged a lunge, Thorn threw a punch that caught him squarely on the jaw. Rhys staggered, and Thorn used the opportunity to grab Eleanor. But Eleanor, no longer the helpless noblewoman, fought back. She kicked Thorn in the shin, and in his moment of pain, she broke free and ran. Rhys, recovered and furious, disarmed Thorn with a swift, brutal flick of his wrist. "She is no man's property," Rhys growled, his eyes fixed on the retreating figure of Eleanor. "Especially not yours." They ran through the rain-soaked streets, the storm mirroring the turmoil in their hearts. They reached the docks, where the sea serpent waited, its sails already being unfurled by the crew. As they boarded, Eleanor looked back at the city lights of Port Royal, a world she was leaving behind forever. On the deck, Rhys was helping her with a coat. "You're free now, Eleanor," he said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "You have a choice. You can go with us, or you can take a small boat and find your own way." Eleanor looked at the open sea, at the dark, boundless horizon. Then she looked at Rhys, at the man who had risked everything to save her. "My life is not my own," she had written. Now, standing on his ship, she felt a dawning sense of possibility. "I choose to be free," she said, her voice clear and strong, "and I choose to be here." Rhys smiled, a rare, genuine smile that reached his eyes. The storm raged around them, but in the center of it, on the deck of a pirate ship, two souls found a quiet harbor. The ship sailed into the night, a new life and a new kind of romance, beginning on the tempestuous waters of the Caribbean. If you enjoyed this tale of romance, rebellion and adventure, don't let the story end here. Subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories from the high seas and beyond. Your next great escape is just a click away.